Welcome to another edition of Believe in Giants. Bob Papa with two-time Super Bowl champion Carl Banks. And boy, it has been a fun journey, Carl.
Yes.
It comes to an abrupt end. I mean, walking around the team facility yesterday, thinking about, Dable and Shane were having their press conference. That's normally the time we would be taping the Coach Dable show for the TV stuff. And sort of the energy of, all right, what's Carl going to do in strategy for this week's game? And then all of a sudden, it's like the rug gets pulled out from under you. Even though we knew the game was over at halftime, it's still that weird feeling.
Yeah, but you know what? That is the gift and the curse of the playoffs, because it all comes to an abrupt end, but for one team. And the higher you go, the higher the expectations and the higher the hopes, and then the bigger the disappointment. I've never been on the losing end of a Super Bowl, but that is and I don't say this lightly, but it is the ultimate loser in terms of football, because the ultimate winner is the guy who walks off with the confetti. So the other guy is like, you made it that far, but boom, that's the thud. So I believe that this Giant team is ahead of schedule. And look, I'm delighted that fans were super disappointed in what they saw on Sunday. But let it go, because you just saw the best team in football, top to bottom. And I said it, for the last couple of weeks leading up into this game, it's Philadelphia's game to lose. And they did not come out and play lackluster. They were focused, and they imposed their will on the Giants. So as far as the season goes, let that be your measuring rod in terms of where you have to be in order to be the best, to compete with the best. The players that remain on the roster and the personnel people, you have now a North Star. You are going to have to be at the level of the Philadelphia Eagles or better, and the San Francisco 49ers. Look, they didn't get there in a year. And that's the good thing about what we saw from this Giant football team. They got to the playoffs and won a game in the first year of a rebuild. And that's important.
Which is uncommon.
Yes. Now the task is to stay ahead of schedule, to build on that, because the fact that they were able to get in the playoffs, win a game, tells you something about the players. It tells you something about the coaching and the culture. So you get better players out there, you compete with better teams.
Yeah, and I think what they've done is they've laid a foundation of what the expectation level is in the building on a day-to-day basis. Here's how we're going to coach you. Here's how we're going to run our operation. Here's what it takes to be successful, because we have proven already that our method, our formula can be successful. And you'll have enough guys coming back that are your core players that will preach and teach the gospel of Dable and company when they bring new people into the building. And you know what? It's not just a bunch of lip service. It's, hey, look what we did last year.
It's proven now. You have a proven track record. Yeah.
So I was thinking about, one of the things that bothered me a little bit. It didn't bother me. I don't want to say it bothered me, but I had seen some talk about the bitter taste of this loss, because it was an embarrassing loss. It's one thing to lose. They got their doors blown off. And I saw some people making some loose ties to, that bitter taste like the 85 Giants had. And there's no comparison. There's no comparison. That was a complete offensive line with a running back that ran for 1,300 yards and had 21 rushing touchdowns, and a defense that was coming off 84, was as good as any defense in the NFL. And let's not forget in the Chicago game, well, you would remember, but it was 7-0 at the half because of the Landeta whiff and the Sean Gale 5-yard touchdown. Bobby Johnson dropped a pass. That game was a lot closer than 21-0. You guys were at the championship level, yet you came up short. The Paul Dottino made a great point to me on Monday in the cafeteria after all was said and done. He said, this is more like the 81 team that finally broke the drought since 1963 of making it to the postseason. And they did it with a lot of no-name guys. You know, Rob Carpenter was the running back. They had pulled guys from a lot of different places, and they started to establish a winning culture with the franchise that Ray Perkins kind of laid that foundation that Parcells eventually took over with. So I think that's more of the analogy, which is encouraging, right? Because it took a culture change.
Yeah, it took a culture change, though. And I may have started that with a conversation I was having with Leonard Marshall. And the analogy I made is that, and it's basically, I should have said it started in '84, the loss to San Francisco.
Right.
Is where it really started for us. And by the time we got to '85, when we thought we were ready, we suffered that bitter defeat. But the San Francisco loss in '84, which was the beginning of our rebuild, our culture shift, the Parcells way. And what that told us, you know, going into that offseason, that we weren't good enough, right? So it gave us
the Niners won the Super Bowl that year.
They won the Super Bowl that year. And so we knew that there was another level we had to get to, because that game, I don't know what the score was, but they pretty much let us know that we weren't ready. And that was kind of that Philadelphia Eagles game this year. And then you come back the following year, meaning us in '85, and think we're ready to go. And then we meet a juggernaut in Chicago, which, showed us that there's just a little bit more intensity we need to really completely dominate. So this is reminiscent of, I would say, 1984, as in terms of where this team is, where that team was, how they drafted, how this team drafted, and what they were able to achieve in the middle of the midst of a rebuild, which led to 9 straight years and 2 championships of playoffs. So
speaking of '84, one thing when you look at for the 2023 Giants moving forward, they have to get some linebackers. I mean, they have to get some linebackers, and they need some D-line help. I think one of the unsung injuries this year is, in the offseason, the Giants signed Nick Williams, veteran guy, to be part of the defensive line depth. And, he got hurt during the course of the season and suffered a season-ending injury. And I think that was something that's one of those things that flies under the radar.
Sure.
But he was a really good, third defensive lineman in that starting group.
Yeah.
And they were never able to recover from that. Like, if they need linebackers and they need D linemen, as many as they can get, they got to get them.
Yeah, they had to get good players. Let's put it that way. They have some good players. Linebacker play it's bad, right? Let's just keep it, 100%. They're a bad group. Jared Davis gave them something. He'll probably remain in the room because he can play football. He knows how to find the football. I think Dorian Beavers was a guy they had a lot of hope for, and he showed his ability to find the football. But, you can't be status quo. You just can't be moderately better. You got to be dramatically better. When you look at what we saw on TV from San Francisco, that should be goals. Linebacker goals for every defensive coordinator. Get me one of them guys.
And they got 2.
Yeah. Warner's just incredible. But, I think the Wizard deserves to have better talent to allow him to do a good job. I mean, there's there's a hole when it comes to talent across the roster, but you've got to give Wink a little more so that he can really bring it. And the guys that are there, here's another thing too, Bob, that I don't know how we address this or how he addresses this, but Azeez Ojulari's got to have a conversation with his body. He's got to say, body, you just can't keep getting hurt. And he's got to look up pain threshold. And I never question that kid. He goes out and he plays hard when he's out there, but he's never available enough on a consistent basis. I don't want to say never, but on a consistent basis. And I just think he's at that point in his career where he's got to have that conversation with his body, and they got to make up their minds that they're going to be on the football field so that he could be a contributor and make a lot of money as a pass rusher too. But right now, he's an inconsistent bit player that they can't count on, not even to finish a game. Now, that's not, this is not a knock on him. It's just his body doesn't hold up, and if it's not one thing, it's another. So this is that crossroads offseason for him and his body to kind of get right and just say, okay, come hell or high water, I'm going to be on the field for 17 games plus next year, because when I'm there, I make a difference.
No doubt about that. I think, you and I did an Inside the Film Room that airs on the Giants' social media platforms. I think there's a lot to be excited about with Kayvon Thibodeaux. You did a really nice breakdown. I don't know when the Giants are going to post it, but you looked at 6 different plays during the course of the season and the improvement that came along with it. I would think that as we get to year 2, especially with some reinforcements with those defensive linemen, because it can't just be all Dexter. And, Leonard Williams had his worst game maybe as a Giant in that game the other day. But having some better people up front as part of that front, Thibodeaux has the potential to take his game to yet a higher level.
Yeah, he's got a high ceiling, and he's already impactful. And the one thing I like about Kayvon Thibodeaux is that he's a complete player. He plays the run, he plays the pass, he knows how to track the football, understands blocking schemes from I would say from the game. It was a preseason game where he hurt his knee to where he is now. He's got so much of a better understanding of blocking schemes in the NFL, and just playing football now. And the game slowed down. It's going to slow down even more for him as he looks at himself this offseason. He's going to say, okay, well, I don't have to be a contact pass rusher all the time. I need to run by guys sometimes. I need to know how to set them up based on my alignment, their alignment. But he is the complete package.
Yeah, and the things that you showed on the coach's tape was pretty awesome. In because a lot of times when you get these young guys who are edge rushers, that's all they want to do is edge rush, and they run themselves out of running plays. He seemed, as the season went on, to almost take his game to another level when it came to the commitment to stopping the run and identifying what was going on. And you made a great point in our Inside the Film Room. It's all well and good. Part of your job is to set the edge, but you're allowed to set the edge and then come off the edge and go make a play. And he showed a willingness, and more importantly, a football IQ and a hand usage and all this other stuff of making that happen.
Yeah, he controls his blockers. He sets the edge, but he's still active when he set it. And, which brings me to a different point of Saturday night's game, meaning we're talking about Thibodeaux getting off of blocks. I think the most disappointing aspect of that game were the defensive backs that did not get off of wide receiver blocks. It looked like a ballroom waltz, a ballroom dance. Every time a receiver came up to block them, They just allowed themselves to stay blocked. And that contributed to the nearly 300 yards rushing they gave up to the Eagles. And I know they're coached really well by Jerome Henderson. And I've had a lot of praise for how they've put this group together, how they've coached this group. This group has tackled well, but man, I'm telling you, I didn't know that Philadelphia had just killer wide receivers who just do everything well. Like, I knew they caught the ball, but shit, I mean, they blocked and it didn't look vicious. It just looked like, hey, I'm Velcro and we're sticking together here until this play stops. And I was really disappointed to see that because it was safeties and corners. And I just thought, you know what? Y'all got to be better than this. You got to be able to get off blocks and make tackles.
I agree with you, Carl. I thought that was my one takeaway. And I think you and I agreed with it. They were outmanned. They were outgunned when it came to talent, right? And when Wink decided to play that 2 deep safety look, unlike the Minnesota Vikings, who have a guy like Dalvin Cook, Philadelphia said, okay, we're going to just run it with a relatively light box. And to your point, just fight and compete. And look, if they're better, they're better. It felt to me exactly what you're saying in this game was they just, even those scrums, like watching the Cincinnati Bengals play on Sunday, watching the Cowboys defense, watching the Niners defense, you get McCaffrey slamming it in there for 2 or 3, or Pollard was slamming it in there for 2 or 3. And then there was that scrum. The pile wasn't continuing to move. In the Giants game, guys were carrying people for 3, 4, 5 extra yards. And it's like, where's someone coming in and walloping somebody?
Yeah, we saw a few of those missed opportunities, but the other part too, which I'm glad it's back in the game, is they're hitting guys low. Like, runners are now getting hit around their legs so that they can fall down. Like, this nonsense of, just trying to grab a guy and hold him up, you're getting abused defensively. Like, somebody's got to wrap a guy up and somebody's got to go hit him in his thighs. It's tackle football, so you're allowed to tackle. So go tackle a guy. Don't hug him. We call that brother-in-law. You're not saving that guy's career. He's ruining yours by letting him do what he does.
How about the last play of the Cowboys game? The very last play. Did you see that dude come up and hit the wide receiver? That was like out of a textbook. Yeah. Here is how you tackle somebody with full force. Shoulder, I think he came in with his left shoulder, head was up, arms around, and he just timed it and blew the dude up.
Yeah. And that's, and we saw another one like that. I think Warner laid somebody out and they threw a flag, and then they had to pick the flag up because the guy was a runner. He wasn't defenseless. But they, the reaction or the reflexive motion of officials now, when they see somebody get laid out, there's got to be something illegal about it. I would force those officials to make those calls on a play-by-play basis, because you're just going to just keep hitting and hitting and hitting. But I have full confidence that this defense will get better. Look, Wink Martindale does not concede. I mean, there's some things that he just has to, when he has to look at what they have to stop, then there are certain things that are going to happen, right? He doesn't go into a game saying, they're going to get 300 yards rushing, but we're going to take away A.J. Brown. That's not how it works for him.
Right.
He might say they'll get a few yards in the passing game, but we're going to play better in the red zone because of our personnel. But they've had, I think, 3 games this year where teams have rushed for close to 300 yards against them. There have been a few games where there have been 500 yards. I think the first Philly game was a 500-yard game against them, right?
Yeah, they had a lot of yards.
So as good as the Wizard is, he put lipstick on a pig, basically, because for them to be able to have the plays that they could make, given the personnel on a weekly basis, is nothing short of, talent in terms of how your coaches are coaching the available personnel. Now it's time to give them better, so that, they can take that next step.
So the other side of the ball is a little bit simpler, right? I mean, they have to get wide receivers, right? What they had was a group of guys that tried hard. They produced, to the best of their abilities, but you can't win in this league. You're watching all the other games. You can't win in this league without having a Deebo Samuel or a Jamar Chase or a T. Higgins, a Tyler Boyd, a CD Lamb. Like, you have to have better receivers, right?
Yeah.
That's just a fact. I think the biggest problem that this team has now, remember, they had a couple of guys that got hurt that they drafted, but they need offensive line help on the interior. They got to revisit the 2 guard positions, and they have to revisit the center spot. I believe Evan Neal's going to get better. He's got a really good offensive line coach.
Mm-hmm.
He played through injury. He went through that rookie fire by storm. I'll trust in their evaluation leading up to the draft that this guy's going to be good, just like I trusted the Andrew Thomas selection. But if they don't get that interior better, it's not going to get better.
Yeah, and that's, look, they've got to always look to upgrade, and the competition will help get some of these guys better. Like a Nick Gates will continue to improve. He's just coming fresh off an injury, but the competition in the room will help him. But you got to get better players in order to have better competition. If you're competing with average, then you're just going to be the best average guy they have. But when you're competing with above average or better, then it's going to make everybody better. And right now they're in a room with average, or they're at the same speed. They need to get better.
Bet Online. Go ahead. Finish.
No.
I'm going to read this. Bet Online remains your number one source for all your sports betting this season. Everything from NFL playoffs, pro and college basketball, UFC, MMA, more. Latest odds, team matchups, live betting options, free contests, live scores for almost any sport or game. Bet Online is truly the fastest, easiest way to bet on all your favorite leagues and events. Head to the website today or use your mobile device. 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Make sure you use the promo code BELIEVE, BLEAV, to receive your rewards. BetOnline.ag, where the game starts. So, Carl, look, they said that during their presser, they're going to start having big-time meetings on Thursday. Joe Shane has been very adamant about, hey, we want to keep as many of our own.
Mm-hmm.
And if you take a look at the Giants drafting since 2012 or 13, second contracts for first-round picks are few and far between. Second-round contracts for any of the Giants draft picks over a 9-year, 10-year span are slim.
Mm-hmm.
That has to change because that's the only way your team is going to get good.
Right.
You want your guys, part of your culture. So the big question is here with Daniel Jones. It certainly sounds like they want him.
Mm-hmm.
It certainly sounds like they believe that if you surround him with a legitimate number one wide receiver and some number twos, and you strengthen that offensive line, that he's got more than enough goods to get it done. He had a fantastic season this season. I see fans in the Twitter universe, kind of talking about, well, what they should give him. Listen, it's out of the Giants' control at this point. They have the negotiating window until we get to the new league year.
Yeah.
But once that happens, then all bets are off. And you could go through the entire NFC South right now, potentially needing quarterbacks.
Yeah.
Throw in Houston, throw in Indianapolis, throw in the Raiders, and keep your eye out for Washington, because if Ron Rivera hires Pat Shurmur, who interviewed for their offensive coordinator job, I guarantee you, dollars to donuts, Shurmur will weigh in heavily on Washington making a run for Daniel Jones. So the Giants, they, when they negotiate with him, they're going to have to come with their best foot forward, because once
Sure.
it hits the open market, now fans have asked about the tag. There's two tags. There's a non-exclusive tag, which means that he would be guaranteed about $32 million for the season, but other teams can negotiate with him. And then the Giants would have the right to match or decline. If they decline, they get draft picks from the other team. But do you want other teams negotiating for you? Then there's the exclusive, which is $42 million, which means the other teams can't negotiate. But here's what the fans have to understand: of whatever cap space the Giants have, and they need to use that cap space to go out and get some better players. Not even big time free agents. Like Joe Shane was telling me, there was a couple defensive linemen this year that they wanted to bring in midseason that they felt would really help the team, but they had no money to pay those guys. So they had to go with what they went with, right? Because of the salary cap situation they inherited. What you have to understand is, if you use the franchise tag on the quarterback, that money counts toward the cap. That full number eats up your cap space.
Yeah.
So franchising Daniel Jones is not really an option unless it's a placeholder. But if it's a placeholder, it's counting towards your cap
until you release it.
So you might miss all of free agency, because you got this money that you have to allocate. So it's imperative that if they feel about him the way they have said publicly, it behooves them to get some kind of deal done. And it's going to start in the high 30s.
Yeah. And here's the thing too. A lot of you fans out there want to say what you would pay him. He doesn't deserve X. Get used to seeing these numbers, folks. These 30s will become 50s in another year and a half. So the 30s will be high 40s for some guys. Get used to it. The new TV money's coming in. The salaries are only going to go up. If you think running backs shouldn't be paid X amount of dollars, watch and see what happens. It's still going to be proportionately lower than where they used to be in terms of percentage of cap, but running backs are going to make $12 to $15 million. If you're 1,300 yard back or 1,700 total yards or close to 2,000, you're going to make 12 million and up on average. And I think they're almost there anyway. But that number goes up. So as you sit back in your calculations at home, just factor in the fact that it rises with I don't know if you want to call it the inflationary numbers or whatever. The league number goes up, salaries go up, and the teams have to spend the money, So you want your team to be smart.
I'm reading this stuff, on my timeline, and, no way a team is going to offer him $40 million. 1 year with 22 touchdowns. You have to factor in his ability to run and his athleticism. But what everybody is missing in this is the other quarterbacks that you're comparing him to, whether it's, guys that could be on the market, Derek Carrs of the world or others. He has never had a receiver or tight end like any of these other guys that you're talking about.
Well,
Derek Carr. People are talking about Derek Carr. Yeah, of course, Jones's passing numbers are not what a bunch of these other guys are. But again, who have they thrown to, and who has he thrown to? Over the last couple of years, it's not even close in comparing. And they're looking at upside. Teams are looking at 25-year-old guy. Here's his upside.
So the argument that everybody makes, he only has 22 touchdowns, and then at one point, he only throws for 145 yards. Here's the thing, folks, and you see it more prevalent than ever these last couple of weeks. He takes care of the goddamn football. And you look at the teams that ain't taking care of the football, they're home with him. right? So as talented as Josh Allen is, I think you see the Daboll effect or lack thereof. Because the first thing they came in, this staff, Brian Daboll, with Daniel Jones, says, we're not going to turn the ball over. He's out of Josh Allen's life. I think his turnovers went back up again.
Yep. Led the league in interceptions.
So valuing possessions, folks, is a hell of a lot better than throwing for 500 yards and 4 interceptions and losing. Valuing the football gives you the opportunity to win football games when you don't turn it over. Valuing the football, and Dallas Cowboy fans, don't be pissed here, but I'm just going to make an example. If you have a quarterback who threw a pick six on an out route in Washington, one was dropped. He comes back to the same play, pick six. Comes back a week later, throws the same out route, interception. This past weekend, the same route, dropped, would have been another pick six. And those are just the same route, and then he's got other stuff that people were picking, and you got to say, who's in his ear saying value every possession, value the football. You got to value, if you're playing quarterback, I don't care if you got a ragtag arm or a rocket. If you cannot value every possession and value the football, you're no good. You're just a talented guy who can't play the game to win it. You're just playing it for show.
And everyone's like, all right, well, if they don't sign them, you use your picks, or if someone else signs them and you transit, you non-exclusive franchise, you go get yourself a quarterback in the draft. Well, how'd that work out for Cleveland? How'd that work out for the Jets twice, Sam Darnold and Zach Wilson? It's not a sure thing that the quarterback that you draft is going to be the guy that can lead you. I mean, yeah, of course, Joe Burrow went number one, and he's proven it out correctly.
Yeah.
But Baker Mayfield went number one, and he's going to be on his fourth team in 5 years or 6 years.
Yeah.
It's not an exact science. Listen, at the end of the day, only Joe Schoen, Brian Daboll, and that coaching staff know what Daniel Jones' value is and what his upside is. And only they know that if we add this and this guy could be as good as most of the guys in the league. Now, I don't think anyone's delusioning themselves that Daniel Jones is Patrick Mahomes, okay? But he can be in an upper echelon of those quarterbacks.
Yeah.
And you know what? Guess what? Here's the fun part about this. They're going to tell us by what they do with his contract.
Yep.
We can, all of us on the outside can guess all we want. Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll will let us know what they really believe Daniel Jones' upside is based on the contract negotiations.
Sure. And here's the thing, too.
They ain't going to just throw him money for the hell of it if they don't think he's that good.
Right. And they ain't going to throw him out the door if they think he's that good either. Here's the thing, folks. You got a quarterback with talent. You got a offensive play caller, contrary to what certain people think, who can scheme his ass off. Because you're going to see some stuff this offseason that you're going to say, well, this guy can't really run a route. How's he open all the time? I mean, they scheme some stuff, man, that are pretty good. And then they can scheme you open like Richie James in the Eagles game. Now, if you had an elite receiver that drop ball would have given you hope and put you down 2 scores, you would have been like, we got a shot. But Richie James drops it, and I'm not going to kill him because it is what it is at this point, right? But just the fact that you can get a guy that open against that defense in Philadelphia, and he hits him in stride. I mean, literally in stride. But that's what your quarterback is. You know,
Well, think about the Washington game, the tie. I mean, there's
yeah,
125 to go in the game, and they scheme it so that Slayton's wide open and he drops it. Or
yeah,
in Minnesota on Christmas Eve, how many in the key points of the game, how many third downs did they have where they schemed it beautifully and a guy
yeah,
dropped the pass? Like
yeah.
it's so
But
we know that.
yeah, and you know, if you guys say, yeah, I like him, but I only like him at this number, get used to seeing a bigger number.
Can we go to the running back here before we
Sure,
have to check out? What do you
sure.
think? It sounds like they
Uh,
want him back, but only
I
the right
want
number.
I want him to want to be back. But I would never listen. He's part of the culture of this team. And it's going to be a delicate dance, these two, because he's a captain, he's a leader. Um, he's got that locker room, and he himself, as a mature running back, he's kind of the vocal part of what Daniel Jones isn't. You know, Daniel's a lead by example. Saquon's a verbal and lead by example guy. He's good for the program, but that don't mean he comes at a discount. They've got to find that happy medium. Somebody leaked out that they had $12 million on the table and Saquon's team turned it down. I don't know if that's true or not. But I think they're going to see where the market goes. And if it creeps
Shane
up,
did say when they did have those conversations, he did say in the press conference, we did have conversations, but we were far apart as far as the money. We
right.
just agreed to let's get to the end of the season.
Yeah. I mean, Saquon finished with what, 1,700 yards total, 13 rushing.
Yeah, big year.
And they really didn't even run him a lot. He had what, 2 games of 9 carries, right?
Yeah.
The last 2 games. So it's how they're using him too, which will extend his career as a Giant. That's the other thing too. Like, he's not taking heavy loads of carries. He had 1 game of what, 29?
No, he had a career high 35 against Houston.
35. That was the one. I hope he's back. I would never encourage him to give a hometown discount, even though I would if I were an insider, if you will. If I was working for the team and I had a great relationship, like a coach or something like that, maybe I wouldn't. But I could see why I want him, but I would not. I want the best for him, but I also want him to be a Giant.
So, listen, here's the thing. As we talked about the tags, you can't tag Daniel Jones because it's guaranteed to your cap. It might create some friction, but in order to at least keep the player, you can tag Saquon Barkley because it's going to cost you.
And start negotiations from there. Right. At least you set a floor.
Right. And that number's 12. I mean, the running back franchise tag is 12. So at least you could placehold that. Because remember, one other thing, just kind of in wrapping up here, when people talk about their salary cap space and Joe Shane, how they're going to do it. Remember, we're not talking about the salary cap just for 23. Now, it's expected to go up appreciably in 24.
Mm-hmm.
But remember, you got Dexter Lawrence, who's going to play under his 5th-year option. You want to extend him. You want to extend Xavier McKinney. You want him part of your program moving forward. You have to think about Andrew Thomas is becoming one of the best left tackles in the sport.
Mm-hmm.
He just got through year number 3, so he's going into year number 4. You want to extend him. The key here is to extend your core players that are part of your franchise that you drafted and grew up in your culture. So when people talk about salary cap space, doesn't mean they got to use it or should use all of it now. You have to think about 23 and 24 and who else is going to be coming up so that those players remain longtime Giants and you keep it together. And if you get the deal done with the quarterback, if he's the guy that you want to invest in, you can then play funny money with that money. And you can spread it out however you want to spread it out.
Sure.
Where you keep his base salary low and convert it into signing bonuses. And the Giants are not a cash-strapped franchise where you can make it palatable.
Right.
So
And then you also have a draft. You have 9 picks in the draft. If they can be competent as they were this past offseason, they'll get some good players. And those players have to be healthy, obviously, but that helps build your team as well.
Yeah, I was talking to Joe Shane in the cafeteria on Monday after his presser, and he's like, it's at the end of the day, it's still going to be about this draft, right? Just like George Young in 84, 85, 86,
Yeah.
you look at those drafts, and those drafts led to Super Bowl 21, and in a lot of cases, it led to Super Bowl 25, and it led to the 88 and 89 Giants being teams that were more than good enough to win championships, even though they didn't.
But you're in the mix.
You're in the mix. You're in the mix. Yeah. Your name is penciled in as, like the Chiefs are right now, perennial favorites.
Yep.
Because of those drafts. So you got anything else to get off your chest here?
No, just stay tuned, folks. Tell a friend to tell a friend. We'll be back. Maybe not as consistently, but we get a few things off our chest as things develop.
Yeah, and you know what? We tweeted out when we're going to do it. I got to go to California and then Morocco for the PGA Tour Champions. Nice. So I'm going to be out of country. I just want to get your thoughts. Who do you think is going to be in the Super Bowl?
I'm going Eagles, man. I'm going Eagles, Kansas City. No, I take that back. Eagles, Cincinnati. Kansas City's quarterback is hurt. Eagles, Cincinnati.
If Mahomes,
and the Eagles will win that game.
The Bengals are Joe Burrow's 3-0 against the Chiefs, and they got an edge about them. And Mahomes' injury is a factor. Okay, he's not going to be close to 100%. Guy's a gamer, went out there and played anyway. So I like Cincinnati to win. I think San Francisco is going to beat them. I think San Francisco. I do. I think because of their defense. Just like the Giants went and played Minnesota with that sieve of a defense.
Mm-hmm.
And then the next week it was like, oh my God, do they have 16 defensive players on the field, the Eagles? Because every play felt like the Eagles had 16. Yeah. I think San Francisco is going to give them a battle. And it probably comes down to a field goal.
Styles make fights, but this is as evenly matched as you can get. And the X factor in this game will be Jalen Hurts.
Well, he's the better of the two quarterbacks. That's for right. Certain.
We're all things equal. You check the quarterbacks and see who's better. This guy, their guy's better. That's why I give them. And if he doesn't turn the football over, Philadelphia, I believe, wins a tough game.
Fair enough. All right. Keep your eye out on social media, our Twitter handles, everything else. We will be back in a little bit. Tell a friend to tell a friend. For Carl Banks, Bob Papa. Thank you to all the Giant fans, by the way.
Yes, indeed.
Unbelievable. Keep building the army.
Yes.
We thank you for your interest. I would be remiss not to say that. And we look forward to visiting with you again here down the road. Tell a friend to tell a friend. Believe in Giants.